welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Marketing Share podcast. I'm Alec Chung, your co-host, and with me is my fabulous co-host, Barb. And I think today's topic is probably going to be the most on-trend topic we've covered to date because, Barb, we are talking about generative AI today and everything that marketers need to know about it. Mike, this has really been a hot topic, right? Would you say for the past 3 months? I think probably every other conversations I've had, people have been asking about this.
Yeah, I think as a search term, ChatGPT is probably one of the hottest terms there are for sure.
Yeah.
I was reading a piece from Goldman Sachs the other day, and they are estimating this marketplace for a total addressable market at $150 billion, generative AI software, moving to $7 trillion in total addressable market over the next 10 years.
Woo. Yeah.
So it's moving so fast, right? And honestly, we need an expert to help us rein in this because it's really hard to even comprehend that kind of growth in a business. Totally. Yep. So you and I have met an expert in this space, Nicole Leffer, and I love Nicole's perspective on this because she is knee deep in this area. She actually runs an entire advisory right now. The advisory is called Catalysts, and she advises CEOs, CMOs, and leadership on how to navigate generative AI right now. So welcome, Nicole.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a great topic. I'm excited to be here today.
And I think what's really cool about this, Nicole, because as you know, our show is focused on helping leaders know what they need to know to run marketing, right? Mm-hmm. And I think one of the biggest questions that marketers have is, okay, what is this generative AI? What do I need to know about it? Because it's going to impact marketing, right? I mean, it's clearly going to have an impact on how marketing gets done. So I think it's going to be really, really helpful just to hear from you. And I know this is kind of what your specialty area has become. Yeah. I think the first thing maybe just to level set before we get into really the good stuff is let's just level set on what generative AI is, because I know when I first heard it, I wasn't even sure what it is. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that hear the term, but maybe wondering, exactly what does that mean? Because AI has been around for a while, but okay, what is this generative AI? So talk to us about what it is and how you see it.
Yeah, so in really simple terms, as we're describing it today and what we're talking about is there are deep learning models, algorithms that are being given tons and tons and tons of training data, massive. I'm talking the entire internet, entire photo libraries of everything on the internet, entire language libraries of everything on the internet, consuming all of that and learning from it, and then being trained on top. There's a lot that goes into different types of training, but with humans as far as what they're learning. And then what that does is that allows them, they've learned, they've absorbed, and now they can generate content. So if we're talking about a language model, it's generating written content. So maybe you can write your blog posts, you can write social media posts, you can write marketing strategy plans. It's actually creating brand new. It's not just going out, searching the internet, copying and pasting and bringing it in. It's actually predicting the next word that should come and writing new strings of words. And so that's a piece of generative AI. You may have heard of some of the image models like Midjourney. That's the same thing. It's generating images. And so from scratch, it's creating images based off of all of this training it has from massive, massive numbers of images it's been trained on. So when we're talking generative AI, we're really just talking about artificial intelligence, these models that have been trained on tons of data, learned from them, and are now generating something new. They're creating. And so when I talk about generative AI, now everybody has a slightly different definition, but for the most part, that's kind of what people are talking about.
Okay, yeah. And that's the part that's so groundbreaking about it too, I think, is because when you actually see what it produces, I mean, you can't tell that it was a computer that produced it. It sounds so natural. It sounds like a person wrote it, right?
Yeah. And there are certain tells that, like, when you're really in it, you start to see.
Yep.
But these models are getting better and better and better. And so a lot of the tells are starting to go away, or there's workarounds so that you don't really have them anymore. There's a lot more in like the image side in general than the writing side at this point that you can kind of tell it is AI generated.
Walk us through a little bit of how you got immersed in this area.
Yeah. So now I don't have a programming background. I have a marketing background. I started as an entrepreneur growing up in e-commerce, essentially. I ran an e-commerce company and was the CMO / head of e-commerce for that for 15 years. That was not at all AI related. Ended up working at a B2B SaaS company as the head of marketing and brought in AI tools very early. So we were talking in 2021, I brought AI tools onto my team. I saw, they were out there. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. We have to use this, and really saw the writing on the wall that this is the future. The second I demoed one of them, I was like, I demoed a tool called AnyWord and went, this is something we all have to know. And so I made it a really big point to build it into our marketing strategy and to make sure I learned it so I can make sure my team would learn it. One, because it's a resume builder. I knew instantly the second I saw this, we have to learn these skills. This is the skill of the future. So we all, my team needed to know this for the long term of their career. And two, because of the impact it could have on our marketing and our team. So I used it for a solid year at that company, went my separate way from them, and dug really, really deeply into learning as much as I could with this because I was so into it. I saw the massive impact it had on our marketing efforts. And so I just dug in, started learning the image tools, the new tools, and then ChatGPT came out. Was on there within the first few days it was out, and went, wow, okay, I cannot imagine people don't start figuring this out now. As we all know, people noticed with ChatGPT, and people just started asking me like, hey, how do I do this? How do I do this? And the next thing I know, I was no longer looking for a new full-time CMO type role or head of marketing role. I was teaching CMOs and heads of marketing and their teams how to do AI and use the AI the same way we had on my team and the same way that all of these tools allow for. So...
Well, that's great. So that also is in what puts you in a great position to help explain, right? Okay, so what is generative AI good for marketers? Like, how should marketers be using this to improve their work and make their jobs easier?
So at this point, generative AI can be used for almost all parts of marketing, to be completely honest. There's not like a one use case. The thing I think a lot of people are like aware of and talking about are writing blog posts or writing blog post outlines and social media. Those are the two. A lot of people go, can you teach my team how to write headlines? And it's so much more than that. So you can use it for everything from those type of content creation use cases through putting together your marketing strategy, putting together your your social media calendar, helping to get responsive, have it review the content you've written and give you feedback on it. You can use it for persona research. If you can think of it at this point, there is AI on anything written that you can do.
Wow.
Now you have to understand what you need to put into it. You can't just be like, write me a marketing strategy and then get a marketing strategy. You have to know how to guide it to give you a marketing strategy, but you can do that. And then a lot of people are using it for images, that type of a thing, to do presentations, all of that. Video is getting there. It's not all the way there yet. So it's a little tough. I mean, there's some video tools that it definitely comes into, but overall, you can't just write a sentence and have a fully blown video that is completely created yet. Give it a week. I mean, I don't know what's going to come out this week. It's only Monday. So,
it can't read our minds yet. Are you kidding me?
No, actually, it's not a marketing use case, but there is now a way they can put you in an MRI machine and show you images, and then the AI can read the MRI and recreate the image you saw based off your brain scan without knowing what the image was. No, it's not like exact, but you'll know if it's like an apple, it's going to show an apple.
Oh my God.
It might not look the same as the apple you saw. mind blowing.
Okay.
So yes, it can read your minds now.
Okay, that's just mind blowing. I was thinking like we're recording this episode, now in early May, and I wonder what will be different a year from now if we go back and listen to this, because it's changing so rapidly.
We're gonna go, oh, that was so cute. Look how sweet and innocent we were. It was so cute. It's gonna be the difference in a year.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So Nicole was telling us that, in fact, this is changing so quickly. Nicole was telling us that we have to record and distribute this very, very quickly because the content literally changes within days, right?
Yeah.
We don't have a concept. Like, I grew up in e-commerce that moved so fast, getting into e-commerce in like the early 2000s, and that evolved so quickly. And I think we've seen technological innovations, if you're over a certain age, that have moved really rapidly. We have never seen something that is like AI. And that is because the AI is teaching the AI. And so something that, we've never had, not just the humans working on it, but the AI is working on itself, essentially. And so this pace at which it's going, also, we have to realize, like, we might have just come to the scene. Even, I've been doing this a couple of years at this point. Like, I'm still new to the scene compared to the people who have been working on this for 20, 30, 40 years. And now it's just getting to this point where it's starting to go to the public. But the companies have a lot more that they just haven't rolled out yet. They're doing safety testing and all kinds of things. So it is moving so fast, and we cannot comprehend.
So in other words, what you're saying is that there's, as kind of groundbreaking as it already seems, there's more to come, and it's already in the pipeline. It just hasn't come out yet, right? But it's coming.
Some of it's in the pipeline and some of it's theoretical, but everybody kind of knows where it's coming. Like, they know that it's going to happen on a lot of it. They maybe have like one little thing, but they're starting to see the technologies emerge, that it's getting to the point where they know that's going to be possible soon. But yeah, this is in its infancy. This is e-commerce in the early 2000s. This is the internet in the 90s. Like, that's where we are. We all think this is so advanced and so wild. I don't think there is a human on the planet, including the people making this stuff, that have any idea where it's actually going. I think a few years from now, we're going to look at this and go, our lives are completely different in every way because of this technology. And I'm not talking 50 years from now. I'm talking 2-3 years from now.
Well, okay. So this is a good segue to, I think, what's probably the first reaction that almost everyone has, which is, okay, if it can do all those things that you just said, right? And that was already kind of like, wow, that kind of blew my mind a little bit there. But if it can do all those things, then is it going to basically eliminate marketing jobs? How is this going to affect our work, right? Or our ability to work? What's your current view on that? Or what would you say?
Yeah, this is an interesting one because in the last couple of months, I've seen a lot of people's views evolve significantly on this, including my own. I think where I am is in the short, medium term, it is not going to take jobs in the sense of no human is needed, period. So if you learn these skills, a human is needed in the process. You're still going to need a human to be involved in guiding the AI, telling the AI what you want and getting those results out of it, making, the judgment calls. There's limitations that a human really needs to review. So it's not just going to be like, everything is run by AI. That's not how it's going to work. That said, I do think that if people do not learn these skills and learn them fast, they're going to get so far left behind. And it's going to be the equivalent of, I didn't use the internet. So are you going to have a job? Probably not. If you are trying to get a job and you don't know how to use the internet in 2023, you're not getting a job, like any professional, career. It's going to be like that. And then I think what we're going to start to see happening is you're not going to need as many people on teams. So the better your AI skills are, the more you can do with AI, the more secure your job is going to be, because you maybe will need one person to do what 3 or 4 or 5 could have done before. I'm not talking this week that we're there, but that's going to be pretty quickly that companies are going to start coming around to that. My own best guess on this is it's not going to come so much in the form of layoffs as when one person leaves, they just don't get replaced. And so that job doesn't open up. And then the jobs that are open are going to continue to be like, they're only looking for AI related skill sets. So they want like, you're an expert marketer who knows how to use AI. I think that we're going to get very rapidly like, you're going to be unemployable if you don't know this stuff. So it's kind of, there's a lot of fear around it and it's justified, but it's kind of get on the train or you might get left at the station kind of a situation.
It certainly brings a whole new thought to lifelong learning, right? Now lifelong learning is not something that you should do. It's something that you must do.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't like say any of that to scare people. But I think it's a reality check that we all need that, and it's going to depend on the company. Some are moving so fast. Some are already there, right? Like they're not going to bring on a single another person that does not already have these AI skills, that's not excited about it, that's not showing this initiative. I've seen those companies. I've also seen the companies who are like, oh, we're going to wait a couple of years on this. I don't think they'll really wait a couple of years, but that's where they are right now. So there's, both extremes.
So you got to learn this AI. This is the new thing that you've got to learn.
Yeah. It's not an option. Even if you're not comfortable with it, to be frank, it's like, in the end of the day, if you really want your career to be okay, you need to start your own thing. Like get a really good side hustle. I think the people who don't need to, that are safe from, needing to necessarily have to learn this, or if you're in like physical, not the jobs that your listeners are in, but if you're a plumber, maybe you don't need it. Although I would venture to guess there's AI that's coming into the plumbing world as well. So.
Could change everything. Yeah.
It's going to, yeah.
I think one of the cool things we're going to ask you to talk about is just, okay, so how do you learn this? But you also mentioned though, that it has some limitations. It has some current flaws, right? Let's explain those too, because I think it's really important to understand where it can kind of fall apart, right? And where you have to be careful.
Yeah. So right now, the biggest limitation is called hallucination. So ChatGPT or Bard or literally any of these AI tools. It's not a single issue. It's any of these generative AI writing tools. They may make things up. Now they are getting a little bit better about this, but it is a major limitation. So they will make things up and they will make things up with authority and they will provide it to you as though it's fact. So if you're using the new Bing search, like you need to click the links that it gives you of the references if you're using it for search, because it may not go to anything. Or, I've had one instance where I'm like, give me the link. The link went nowhere, went to this page is not found. So, and that was on Bang, right? Okay. So like that happens. It is what it is. It's just an awareness you need to have that they're not research replacements. I know when they have the internet connection and they can give you the source, they can start to become a use in your research. But they make things up, they make them up with authority. And so like one example of that, when I say it makes it up with authority and it can be sneaky, I've had ChatGPT give me, I said, cite the source of what you're telling me. And it gave me the name of a research paper with the summary of the research paper, the name of the people who wrote the research paper, the institution. Went to look it up. People were real. And had worked together in this field on research. Institution was real. Paper did not exist, nor did the summary that it gave me. Like none of it. So, it was sneaky enough to go, these people would do this kind of work and they would do it at, Stanford or Harvard or wherever it said. But it was not. It was so sneaky that it was like, these people will do that. And this is the kind of thing they'd say, but they had never found that. They had never done that research. So you cannot count on it to be a research replacement. In fact, your subject matter experts reviewing your output, more important than it has ever been, because if you are a layperson just kind of going through the motions on the content and you're used to your subject matter experts being the ones that tell you what to put in the content and reviewing it, you may not notice that it gave you something that's not true. And you need that trained eye that knows the subject matter in and out to go, ooh, that it threw something in there that is not true.
Wow. That's kind of like a confident empty suit. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really dangerous, but maybe that's the opportunity for additional work, right? Your
Right.
AI fact checker.
And that's a skill that I think all of us should be sharpening with AI. They'll fix this eventually. Like GPT-4 is much better about it than GPT 3.5, which was the original ChatGPT. So there's like the newer model that's come out since the first ChatGPT. Like it is much better on hallucinating, but it's not eliminated. It's just better. Eventually they will figure this out, but in the short, medium term, and until we are positive this is figured out, I think that just as much as you want to sharpen your AI skills, you want to be sharpening your fact checking and critical thinking skills. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and I think that's a really critical point to understand, which is like it's so good at creating natural language and responding to you with natural language that it can sound really authoritative.
Yeah.
Right. And so if you're not on the ball, you'll think that, oh, okay, well, it must have got this from somewhere, and you'll rely on it. And yeah, you have to really rely on subject matter expertise or know to be able to spot. It's like, oh, we should check this, or hey, I think we this might not be accurate, right? Exactly. So that's a sneaky part of it.
Yeah.
Watch out on false credibility.
Yeah. Now, what about this other thing that I keep hearing? And I know you've explained this, but I still, even though I've heard you explain it, sometimes I still have to stop and think about it. What is this thing about it's only been trained based on data up till, what was it, like September of 2021? What is the impact of that?
Yeah, so now that's the OpenAI GPT-4 model. So like for context for your listeners, that is the more advanced model that's available in paid ChatGPT accounts. I don't know the date on the original ChatGPT, which is what's in the free account, but I think it's it might be the same date or it's around the same time.
Okay.
But what this means is that the data that it was fed, all of that stuff that it learned from, only went up to September of 2021. Right? So it was not learning the internet in the last week. It has not been out there surfing the internet, does not even have connection to the internet. So the connection to the internet of any data that it has learned from and been trained on ends in September of 2021. It does not know anything that happened in 2022, does not know anything that's happened in 2023. And so if you are asking it anything that is remotely current, ChatGPT has no idea. If it is doing this, it is making it up. Now, I asked ChatGPT to explain to me what was going on with the rapid rise in egg pricing. I asked it a month or so ago. I was like, why is the price of eggs gone through the roof in late 2022 and early 2023? And it gave me I was shocked. It was so spot on to what was really happening, but it was reasoning off of just like, what is an imaginary story I think could have caused this spike in egg prices that happened whenever that happened? It was like supply chain and bird flu, and like it was giving me very specific things that converged to cause this. You would think it was connected to the internet, and no, it was not. It was just making it up, and it happened to be right. So it's a little bit insane when you think about it, because a lot of people think it has an internet connection and it does not. Now, there are plugins in ChatGPT and paid accounts if you're on the wait list that some people have access to. Again, this is getting to like who gets access to what or what are you using. You would know you're browsing the internet if you're using it. And what that allows ChatGPT to do is the same thing Bing does, which is it just goes, okay, this is the request. What kind of internet search should I do? And it does an internet search. And it goes out and it looks for additional information, but it doesn't retrain on the entire internet. It just, like if you did an internet search and clicked a couple of links, that's what it's doing. That's what Bing does. That's what ChatGPT does if it has internet connection. It reads that information and writes its answer, incorporating that, just like you had given it a little bit more data, but it is not retraining on anything. It's just adding in like, oh, now I know what's on that one web page or those 2 or 3 web pages into what it is giving you.
And only for that search, right?
And only for that search, that chat thread.
Yeah.
It doesn't remember it now. If you come back and start another chat, it's not now updated on its training. It's not retraining. It's just for that moment looking at that website. So
okay.
Yeah.
So it can hallucinate, it can make things up, And secondly, it's only been trained up to a certain point in time. So its current information, or its information isn't necessarily current to something that happened in the last, whatever, year plus.
Exactly. And it also isn't necessarily going to know everything about everything, right? Yeah. Like, it's been trained on a lot of data, but it hasn't trained on every piece of data. And the other thing is, you got to remember, on that same front, it's been trained on human created data, and it doesn't know what is and isn't true of that data. So not only is there the hallucination issue, but, you know, theoretically it can learn like, oh, such and such is a more credible source than this one, you know, this is a more credible source than that, but it doesn't necessarily have any idea. And so stuff's out there on the internet, and it's learning all of it. That's why you were seeing early on, it's much better. They've baked in a lot of controls around this, but like people saying that like it was being snarky to them. Well, what do you think the comments they're reading online are of how humans are supposed to behave when it went out and trained? So I've still had I don't have ChatGPT get an attitude like ever. I use ChatGPT a lot. I've never experienced that. I don't think, maybe very early on. But a lot of this stuff, like, you know, Bing was doing it for a while. Like, I've had Bing tell me, you know, it gave me an answer. I told it was wrong. And it said, I don't feel like having this conversation anymore. Let's change the topic. It's like, it learned that kind of language from humans.
Oh my gosh.
Reading the internet. So it's got this limitation of, it's like only as good as the data it was trained on. And that data was generated by humans. So it's got bias. It's got inaccuracies, all of that baked into it as well.
So I'm hearing you say it's a bit challenged at discerning too, because that's a bit of that, right? It's kind of like maybe it needs some manners or.
I mean, like, it's not bad on that. I'm exactly, you know, there's the moments of it, but like, I would say it depends on what model you're using on the discernment. Yeah. Like GPT-4 is actually very high reasoning skills. So, in certain things, it's not good at discerning. Other things, I think it's much better than humans at discerning. So it really just depends on what you're working on with it.
You know, let's talk about, because you've been alluding to these, but I think maybe we should just talk about these. Can you go through, so what are all the different models, right? So just ChatGPT 3.4, 3.5 and 4. Run us through the ones that we need to know about.
So the biggest that are huge right now within the marketing space specifically are all made by OpenAI. And so anything you hear that's the parent company that is making these models. If you hear anything that is GPT, it is almost positively, most of the time, it is an OpenAI model. So the big ones that you ever hear about with OpenAI is really numerically in order of how advanced they are. So you'll hear GPT-3, which is starting to get kind of retired out of a lot of stuff, but that was the first real good one was GPT-3. Mm-hmm. Then there was GPT 3.5, which you probably know is the original ChatGPT. When ChatGPT came out, that was GPT 3.5. And a lot of people use ChatGPT interchangeably with 3.5, but that's the model, which is just more advanced than 3. And then now, several weeks ago, I lost track of time, a month or so ago, GPT-4 came out. Again, these are all the same company. So GPT-4 is the more advanced version than GPT 3.5. If you're using ChatGPT, you are using a free account, you're still using GPT 3.5. If you're using a paid account, you have the option to switch it to GPT-4, which is the most advanced model. So those are the big OpenAI language models. Okay. And then there's 3, maybe you could argue 4 other major companies with major underlying language models. So those OpenAI models are making the ChatGPT type products, but they're also being used by a lot of other companies. Or when they're building AI features, they're using one of those OpenAI models to build all of their features with. They're not going out and training the internet on tons of data.
Okay.
So tons of what you're seeing are built by OpenAI on the language itself. Then there is a company called Cohere. They're not in a ton of marketing stuff, but they are one of the big language models out there. So that's not OpenAI. It's their own. They're training themselves. There's a company called Anthropic, which if you've ever heard of Claude, some people have heard of Claude. Claude is Anthropic. I would say from a marketing perspective, they're the most likely to be another major model. Cohere has some stuff that will start baking into some marketing tools, but Anthropic is like the other big one from a marketing standpoint of the major models. And then Hugging Face is another brand, another company similar. They just came out with a ChatGPT competitor called Hugging Chat, I believe. So that's a third. So that's the big four. Stability AI is another one that just would be classified in the same category. They'd been more on the image generation side, but they just came out with a language model. So you could say that's the big five at this point. OpenAI, Cohere, Anthropic, Hugging Face, Stability AI. And then there's a couple of like smaller other models. So Bard does not fall into any of those categories. That's Google's proprietary model. They do have their own, but they're not building Bard into a bunch of other people's products. So it's kind of its own category. And there's a company called Writer that has their own language model that is built specifically for business enterprise marketing use cases. Well, not just marketing, but business enterprise writing use cases. There are some other little ones. I'm not going to list every one of them, but those are really the big ones to know about. They all are a little bit different. They all have hallucination issues. That's still, that's a universal thing. And that's just talking about language. I'm not going to get into all of that with images, but it's a similar kind of a thing with the image side of things.
Nicole, can you speak to the importance of prompt engineering right now, right? To get the product that you want on the other side, it's really mission critical, because I was sharing with you my first couple of weeks with Chat 3.5, right? And, I got kind of tired because I wasn't doing prompt engineering the right way. That's like mission critical to getting product that you want on the other side, right?
Yeah. And first off, I just want everybody to know prompt engineering does not mean you have to be an engineer.
Right.
And we could even kill that word, I think, and like maybe be better off, because it's really just being a really good communicator while you write your prompts. And so that's the biggest thing, is you have to communicate really clearly and specifically with any of these models. Exactly what you want to happen, not just write me a blog post, right? Like if you just write me a blog post, it's going to give you very basic generic content that you're probably never going to want to use. But if you give it very specific directions, you tell it to adopt a persona that is you are the top blog copywriter on earth with a specialization in healthcare, like, writing blogs for healthcare companies, and you are a top expert in med tech. If you give that kind of specific, and then you tell it, we're going to write a blog post about XYZ topic, we're going to fMRI imaging for brains, very specific. And then we want to make these points in the blog post, even giving it a few of those ideas. And here is the voice you want to write in, and giving it specific directions of how you want it to write. And then ask it to write you an outline for the blog post first. That's the kind of prompting that we're talking about, that you get very specific, not write me a blog post. And there are tools where you don't necessarily need quite as much prompting, because they've done some of that, like get it to be the top blog copywriter kind of prompting and stuff. But personally, I really love the tools that allow you to put that level of detail, because it allows you to really adjust the output exactly how you want it to
be. So then learning how to use the tool seems like one of the first things that if I'm a marketing leader and I want to help my team get better at this, it sounds like they just need to get in and actually learn how to best utilize the tool, because there's a little bit of practice and a little bit of a technique that goes into this, right? That's kind of what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that just getting in and experimenting and playing and learning how does it respond to different kinds of inputs, what is my getting out when I type this in, that's a really, really good starting point. And I also recommend not picking 75 tools to try to learn, right? pick one or two, like really pick one, like just start with one. And then once you feel really comfortable that you can do a great job with that one, you can start adding, one or two more, but do one at a time. You don't have to go out and experiment with and try every single AI tool. You will go absolutely insane because there's like hundreds of them coming out every week, and then the features getting baked into everything that we use. And so don't try to go learn all of the AI. Try to learn some of the big ones with one of the big ones with staying power.
What would you recommend in terms of people wanting to learn? So you said pick one. I know one of the things that you do is you come in and you help teams. You'll get hired by a marketing team to come in and help train them on how to use these tools. What other recommendations or tips do you have for someone that's like, okay, I clearly got to learn this. I heard the message, right? I've got to learn this in order to keep my skill level up. What other suggestions do you have for those individuals and for the marketing leaders that are trying to help their teams keep up?
Yeah. So find reputable people that you trust. They actually know what they are talking about, and only listen to them. And I know that sounds silly. Like there's great content, like tons of great content out there from lots and lots and lots of people. And, we're all still learning it. But there are people who have actually used this hands-on that have really dug deep in learning how to use this and have been using it for, since before ChatGPT came out, have been using it in real world use cases. Like find those kinds of people, and people who are not strictly ChatGPT. Like I obviously love ChatGPT, but you do want the perspective of somebody who understands beyond just ChatGPT. What are the implications and what's going on? And I recommend following those people and what they're putting out on guidance, because otherwise you're going to end up following or getting guidance that is really awful. Like I would say 90% of what I see people putting out about how to use ChatGPT or how to get these mind-blowing results is really awful advice. And it's because they don't actually know. It's people cashing in, a month ago? No, well, 6 months ago, it was crypto. And that was the big thing you had to know. And Web3, and they were making a buck off of that. And prior to that, what's the thing of the hour that they could make a big buck on? There's a lot of those hype people trying to jump in and selling on AI. And so being aware, are you following those people, or are you following people who are actually using this that actually know what they're talking about? If somebody is every day posting stuff that is this is the next huge thing, you absolutely have to try this tool, they're probably a hype try to make a buck person. Just to be frank, there is not some world changing, every single person needs to learn it thing happening literally every day. It's, there's fundamental skills you need to learn that apply to all of them, and finding those people to follow and get that information and guidance from. Or coming to somebody like me and I can come in and sit down with your team, go, what are your goals? What do you need to accomplish? And build a training out specifically for you for what your team needs.
I was going to say, Nicole, if I was a CMO at a large corporation, I would probably hire you to come in, help us frame out what might be a KPI and how we can improve this going forward. And then the learning curve that I would want to know probably is, how long would it take my team? What, should I budget, X every quarter for Nicole to come in and help us with certain things? It feels like because we're learning, it feels like it might be something that you would need ongoing, but maybe a little bit less later on as you start to get your feet wet with the first couple of tools, right?
Yeah, I think so. Definitely. I think right now, first, you got to get people just getting their feet wet, starting to use it, starting to learn. A lot of times, once you start digging in, you really go on an amazing self-learning journey, and you get really excited. And then there's other people, it's they just are not doing it at all. They don't. It's a really interesting range of what is happening with AI. So for those that are constantly wanting to learn and update, that is definitely something that I think in the long term, a lot of, companies are going to do, as wanting to do regular trainings.
if you're one of these people that puts a little time into it and you're regular about it and you're consistent about it and you try to acquire the skill, how long do you think it'll take for you to get reasonably comfortable or good at it? Are we talking, a couple weeks, a few weeks, months?
I think it depends on how much you decide to use it. Right. So, and when I say that, like, I learned when I was learning ChatGPT, for example, I was using ChatGPT for everything. In fact, I still kind of do. Like, I asked myself first, can I do this with ChatGPT? Can ChatGPT help me with this? How can I use ChatGPT in this? And I use it if I can. And if you kind of adopt that mentality, now, so an example of that is, one of the first things that I tried with ChatGPT was, I need to make dinner. Like, I'm playing with this one, like, I need to make dinner. What should I make? Here's what I have in my house. What can I make for dinner? And letting ChatGPT come up with ideas, and doing like things like that actually taught me so much about how to use ChatGPT for marketing, because I understood how it reasoned and thought. I understood I could give it a list of inputs and get very highly tailored outputs, because I was only giving it the things in my fridge that it was allowed to use. And I could see if I prompted that one way, I was getting other things written in. But if I wrote specific other words, I was getting exactly what I wanted. That taught me how to use ChatGPT to get a LinkedIn post that I want, because I was like, these are my inputs. So if you started kind of getting this mentality of like, even if it's not actually going to save me time, kind of this fun, playful curiosity of, I wonder if I can do this with ChatGPT, and then doing it whenever you have the opportunity, personal life, professional life, just all the time. I think it's reasonable to think you could have a pretty solid skill set within a month, 6 weeks. Decent if you're continuing to pay attention to what are the updates, what else can I do? If you have somebody like me come in and train you ahead of that, I could probably cut that down to a few weeks of time. But, and then if you're using it once a day occasionally, it could take you, you're never going to get caught up. Right? Like, you're just never going to get there if it's just like, no, you're going to be way better than somebody who doesn't use it once a day.
Sure.
But, so there's just this range of, depending on how much you're putting into it.
Yeah, there's still too much change and evolution going on. So you almost, it's hard, you have to work harder to keep up, right? And to keep current.
I mean, I'm tired.
Maybe last question here, and then we'll maybe do a quick wrap. But like you mentioned, either following experts or just keeping up with what's going on. Do you have recommendations on like what sites to go to, or where can we keep up with what is going on? Because it seems like it's just, I keep hearing news about it, but how do you keep up with it, or what do you recommend?
Yeah, so I do share a lot on my LinkedIn if anybody wants to connect on there. I do try to, I don't share everything because it would be really overwhelming. There is somebody named Rachel Woods, who is a really good AI expert, not specific to marketing, but just the space in general. She is one of my personal sources. She has a community called the AI Exchange, which you got to be willing to be like deep in the woods. Like, I mean, like the AI Exchange but she has resources too, that even if you're more beginner, it's not all marketing stuff, but it's just AI in general to kind of learn this stuff. It's really catering to that kind of like 1% of the 1% that like really want to know this stuff. So like I get into my happy place learning stuff from Rachel, and from like Rachel in general, anybody can learn from. AI Exchange, like if you want to go deep, that's a place to go. And then I also recommend, like, if you're in a CMO community or you're in any kind of marketing community, make sure to see if they have an AI channel, because people are sharing what they're doing. Like, that's probably one of the best ways you can keep up with it. I mean, there is a long list of experts out there, but I would just, you don't want to overwhelm yourself. So those are good places. There are really good experts on LinkedIn as well. So, yeah.
That's great, Barb. I think we covered a lot. I mean, this is a lot of helpful information. I think helpful for leaders to get their heads wrapped around this topic. I think the key things that I'm remembering from what you said was you got to start learning this, because it's going to affect the way we do our work. There are limitations, so you got to be real careful. And right now, expertise is real important, because you got to catch when the AI is giving you something that's not right. And so you do have to rely on human expertise to still oversee it and catch those types of things. But the best way to learn this is just to get in and start doing it. And there is learning. There's a learning curve to this, right? I mean, like I've tried this too, which is like, if you just go in and you're very simplistic in how you interact with the tool, you're not going to get, what you're going to get back is not very good. But as you get smarter about how you communicate with it, like what you call, right, it's not prompting it, but as you get smarter about how you ask the questions and then iterate on it and tell it to do a second or third version of it, then you start to figure out, this is how you really get the power of this tool. So I think getting in there and learning it and then following good, trustworthy experts like yourself.
Yeah. You know, Nicole's analogy of saying the first AI, right? The first ChatGPT was kind of like a really good high school writer. Mm-hmm. And now the next generation is kind of like your college level, right? So reminder, you can't let them go crazy, right? I mean, this is like they need supervision. And that's what I think I heard in this discussion as well. And it may mean more work for the fact checker, right?
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I like to say, look at ChatGPT like a brand new entry-level colleague who's also the top expert in the world at what they do simultaneously. So you've got to know it's got the capacity to do really phenomenally great work. Mm-hmm. However, it's basically a kid straight out of college. This is their first job. They know nothing about your company, and you have to spell out every single thing. You cannot take for granted that ChatGPT knows what you want, because it'll just make it up if you don't tell them. It's just going to run with its own ideas if you don't tell it you know, just like a really eager college kid or straight out of college, they want to impress their new boss. They're just going to make it up if you don't tell them. Same thing.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah. It doesn't want to disappoint you. So it's just going to give you the best answer it thinks it can give you.
It really wants to make you happy.
Right.
That is really the goal of the AI. So it's going to say what it wants, what it thinks you want it to say. So
that's a great way to close it. I love that analogy. Thanks for sharing all this expertise with us. I think our listeners are going to really love this content, and we appreciate you having on the show.
Nicole, how would people get a hold of you?
So on LinkedIn, or my website is NicoleLeffer.com, and there's contact information there as well, and all the information about my trainings and everything.
Great. I'm all about shortcuts, and I know I would probably be there quickly. Thanks again.
Thank you. It was so great. Thank you guys for having me.